This is our time. The main news at this hour. In the studio, Yulia Gorovaya. Hello. The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenskyy, will meet with U.S. President Donald Trump in Washington on Monday, August 18. He announced this after a phone conversation with the head of the White House. The conversation lasted more than an hour and a half. This was reported by the Ukrainian leader. Trump called him after finishing his meeting with the Russian dictator Putin in Alaska. At first, the heads of state spoke one-on-one for about an hour, and then European leaders joined them. According to Zelenskyy, Ukraine is ready to work as productively as possible to achieve peace, and America plays a significant role in this process.
We support President Trump's proposal for a trilateral meeting between Ukraine, America, and Russia. Ukraine emphasizes that key issues can be discussed at the level of leaders, and the trilateral format is suitable for this. I intend to discuss all the details regarding ending the killings and ending the war with President Trump in Washington on Monday. I am grateful for the invitation. It is important that Europeans are involved at every stage to reliably ensure security together with America. We discussed positive signals from the American side regarding participation in ensuring Ukraine's security. We continue to coordinate our positions with all partners. Thank you to everyone who is helping. Volodymyr Zelenskyy, President of Ukraine, on Telegram.
European Union ambassadors will hold an informal video conference today following the phone conversation in the US-Ukraine-Europe format. The sole topic of this meeting will be Russian aggression against Ukraine. This was reported on the website of the European Council. The participants plan to exchange views and outline a plan of action for the future. A trilateral meeting between Trump, Putin, and Zelenskyy may take place in the near future. Preparations for it have already begun. The U.S. president announced this in Fox News immediately after meeting with the Russian dictator in Alaska. The head of the White House said that during the talks, he managed to reach an agreement with Putin on certain points.
They are planning to arrange a meeting between President Zelenskyy and Putin. And, it's not that I want to be there, but I have to make sure this meeting happens. We reached an agreement on some points, though there aren't that many, just one or two of the most important ones. Now, a lot depends on President Zelenskyy. And I would also say that European countries should step in a bit as well.
And let me remind you that the day before, a meeting took place in Anchorage between the U.S. president and the Russian dictator. It lasted just under 3 hours. Afterwards, Donald Trump and Putin came out to the press with brief statements. And although the head of the White House was supposed to speak first, since he was the host, it was the Kremlin leader who took the floor. Putin played along with Trump, claiming that the war supposedly wouldn't have started if he had been in power in 2022. The President of the United States spoke more briefly, calling the meeting productive. I should also note that before meeting with Putin, the American leader stated, in particular, that the goal would be to achieve a ceasefire. Putin is not interested in peace, says Czech Foreign Minister Jan Lipavsky. He welcomes Donald Trump's efforts to reach a peace agreement, but emphasized that the Russian dictator is bluffing and does not take the negotiations seriously.
We heard propaganda statements from Putin about the roots of the conflict. The problem lies in Russian imperialism, not in Ukraine's desire to live freely. And let's not forget that hidden in these words are also Putin's attempts to roll back the security architecture to 1997, when the Czech Republic was not yet a member of NATO. It is in our existential interest to prevent such scenarios. If Putin were serious about peace negotiations, he wouldn't have attacked Ukraine. Jan Lipavsky, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic, Facebook.
Meanwhile, Lithuanian Foreign Minister Dovydas Sakalin accused Putin of ongoing manipulations and veiled threats. The diplomat drew attention to how the Russian dictator greeted Trump in Alaska. Putin said, and I quote, "Very glad to see you healthy and alive." Sakalin also reminded that the Kremlin's master has a habit of poisoning his critics with radioactive poison, and in this context, his words can be interpreted ambiguously. Americans who came out to protest in Anchorage are not surprised that the talks between Donald Trump and Putin did not bring any closer a peace agreement or an end to the war that Russia started against Ukraine. The protesters told journalists about this. I should also note that Americans held rallies in support of Ukraine and against Putin's visit even before the heads of the White House and the Russian dictator arrived in Alaska's capital. Hundreds of local residents took part in these events. The demonstrations continued the entire time the talks were taking place in Anchorage.
There's nothing new about this. We didn't expect any results from this meeting. Except maybe that these two met for the first time in 4 years.
Obviously, they couldn't have made a deal without Zelenskyy. And I think one of the reasons he wasn't invited is that, personally, I don't believe Trump or Putin are actually interested in making a deal. I think they're just letting the world believe they're interested in making a deal. I think Russia is basically trying to push for new ceasefires and trying to pressure Ukraine in order to take control of the situation.
The First Lady of the United States, Melania Trump, delivered a personal letter to the Russian dictator Putin about the abducted Ukrainian children. This was reported by the Reuters news agency. The letter was personally handed over by the President of the United States, Donald Trump, during the summit in Alaska. The contents of the letter have not been disclosed. All that is known is that it concerned the abduction of Ukrainian children by Russians. The head of the office of the President of Ukraine, Andriy Yermak, thanked the First Lady of the United States for her leadership. Melania Trump was also thanked by the Ukrainian humanitarian program Bring Kids Back UA. They emphasized that every word of support brings the children closer to their families, communities, and home. Against the backdrop of talks between the U.S. president and the Russian dictator Putin, Russia continues its attacks on Ukraine. So, on Saturday night, the Russians launched an Iskander-M ballistic missile and 85 drones. The defense forces neutralized most of the drones, 61 in total. As reported by the air forces of the armed forces of Ukraine, there were still some hits. More than 10 locations were affected. And on Saturday night, Russian forces also continued shelling the Dnipropetrovsk region. They targeted Nikopol with artillery and SPZ drones. Drones also attacked the Pokrovska community in the Sinelnikov district. Fires broke out there on the grounds of several agricultural enterprises. And the day before, the Dnipropetrovsk region was also under Russian shelling. Several districts were affected, including Nikopol. 2 civilians were wounded there. Infrastructure, business property, and residential homes were also damaged.